Hey guys, and welcome back to the Who Cares Anyway podcast. We are live and it is Friday night. Now, if I sound a little bit out of it, it's because, I'm currently fighting a cold, so I'm pretty medicated and I've got more essential oils in my system than a fucking weed shop. But, that's all good. It's all good. I'm still alive. I'm still here, which is what I can safely say for, everybody else on the panel. Now, tonight's a little bit different. Because, we're going to do our usual thing where we talk about the news and whatnot, but because it's kind of a slow news week, and I didn't really, some of the movies that are coming out this week, we either want to save those topics for a different time, or there just isn't much to say. I'm just like, you know what? I am in a little bit of a debate mood tonight. And this is partially inspired by somebody else on the panel who... I'm not going to throw him under the bus because, you know what? Look, shit happens. Sometimes you run late to things. It's all good. It's all good. No harm, no foul. But, Ryan, how are you doing tonight?
Bro, I'm just, doing the best that I can because I'm heading into, for me, a long work week. So I just got a lot on my plate right now, and I was like, I'm going to go hang out with my buddy and just, relax a little bit, spend some time, and it shouldn't have been a big deal. And then next thing you know, I'm looking at the clock. I was like, I don't have enough time to get home before 8:30. I was like, shit. Well, I'm going to text Chris and hopefully he doesn't fire me. But but no, I made it alive. I did not get a speeding ticket for anybody who's wondering, but I might have, deserved one. So, but I made it. So that's what matters, right? Show business. The show goes on.
Exactly. No, like I said, I'm not judging you. I know better than that. But, also on the panel, we have Nico Suave Rigoli. You are here, the Suave one himself. Now, Nico, you hosted your very first Schmodown reaction right here on the channel. How was that for you today, sir?
It went well. The reaction part did. The matches themselves, the first match in particular of the two, there's a lot to say, and there's also a lot not to say about that match in particular. So, if you're interested in what I'm talking about here, go watch that as soon as we're done in about 2 hours. It's been an interesting week. I had my first Taekwondo class in 6 months this week. I had been taking some time off to heal up an injury, and then the injury resolved itself, but I had school obligations, and then it was just hard to find a way to incorporate it back in with all the studying I've been doing and all the shows I've been on. But we figured out a balance, came back on Thursday. It was for a special Eskrima fighting stick class, so that was fun. What was not fun was afterwards. Luna, you will all know my dog from previous videos we've done on this channel. It's her birthday today, by the way. She just turned 3, but it feels like she's going through the terrible 2s right now because she is just doing whatever the hell she wants, including shitting in random places that we don't see. And I ended up stepping barefoot on a piece of poop last night. So did my sister. So did Gianna. And we were both very pissed. And we both yelled at her. And her immediate reaction was, oh no, I'm in trouble. I better flop on my back so they'll give me a belly rub and I won't get in trouble anymore. So she's a smart dog. She's a smart dog. And we love her, but she's becoming very, very rebellious lately.
Well, isn't that kind of how it is with having a pet in general?
Yeah, but I don't think your...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't think your pet is supposed to shit everywhere and turn your household into the city of San Francisco.
Oh.
I'm just saying, when your city has an app to, here's where people have been shitting, you...
Wait. Okay, hold on. No, don't bury the lead here. Is that a real thing?
That this is a genuine thing. There are so many people and it's not 100% a positive thing. And so far as a lot of this has to do with the homelessness and stuff like that.
Right.
But there is so much and a lot of it, there's also just needles and stuff everywhere. But a huge thing that's a point of contention right now in the city of San Francisco is that there are people just shitting all over the city, so much so that there is an app where you can report where you've seen shit on the sidewalk and stuff, so people know to avoid it.
Nice. So, guys, also, quick side note. In case I have to sneeze or something tonight and there's like a great shot on the replay, please take a screenshot and send it to me on Twitter at Skywalker Dohmen. I will greatly appreciate it. But I'm looking in the chat and I'm seeing a whole bunch of people here. We got the cool guy, Brian Newsbaum, Star Drew, and I also see Tyler from the Dungeon Facebook page. What's up, everybody? Now, and speaking of the Dungeon and Schmoedown and whatnot, I feel I feel a little bit of injustice right now because, okay, for all the Schmoedown patrons out there, if you weren't aware, there actually is a Discord fan league where for all the patrons at the $2 and up tier, you can actually compete in the Discord league, and I made my geek debut this week. Poor Jimmy DeRye. The final score at the end of round 2 was 19-6 because he spun Star Wars. He got 3 questions wrong. I stole them, and then I went 10 points for 10 points in Star Trek, and that was where it just ended, just again demolished. But and somebody very popular gave it a watch, but all that he cared about was the fact that Jimmy and I both missed a Back to the Future question. Boo fuckity who.
Hey, that's a classic right there. You can't. You got to have those, man. I don't know shit about Star Trek, but I do know shit about Back to the Future. So.
Ugh. Well, here then.
Damn it, dude. You know what? You're fired. Get out of here. You can't host this anywhere.
Well, okay. Says the dude who was late.
I know, but I was just sneezing all over the place.
Right. But no. So, well, and to be fair, I don't feel bad about missing the question because, well, sorry, folks. I don't like Back to the Future very much. Like, I acknowledge, and I'll even say this, the cinematography is great, the editing's great, the score is great, some of Alan Silvestri's best work, but I think the movie's kind of gross. Like,
it is.
Really gross.
There is a lot of potential rape in that thing, so you're not wrong.
I mean, it's also kind of a product of its time.
It is.
The 80s were a little bit lawless in that sense. But at the risk of embarrassing myself, do you remember the question?
Yeah. So the question was, what alias does Marty go under when he's sneaking around his dad's room?
Ooh, Calvin Klein.
That is incorrect. Darth Vader from Vulcan.
That's right. And he's Calvin Klein when his mom sees him in his underwear. Which, the fact that I even just said that sentence does kind of prove saying about it's a weird movie.
Yeah, like you have to be on the same kind of coke that Robert Zemeckis and all them were on to enjoy it, in my opinion. But
yeah, Steven Spielberg helped get this movie greenlit. Everybody.
by the way, I love how Ryan said the 80s were pretty lawless, and my first thought is, do you mean the 1980s or the 1880s?
Both. And the 2080s when we get there too. So.
If we get there, if there's still a planet, by that time.
We're not here to get into that. We're not here to get into that.
Humans are too good at having sex. Trust me, we'll be alive.
The title is about debating.
Oh.
We may have 3 heads, but we'll be alive.
We'll be around in some way, shape, or form.
You ever watch Mad Max?
Exactly. And Ryan, actually, because I haven't really seen you much this week, like, how you been?
I've been good. Like I said, I've been busy helping out my friend. I went his wife's mom has a farm, so we did some work there on the house and stuff like that, helping her get it ready so that she can move. She's kind of getting a little older, and there's a lot for her to handle by herself.
Right.
So did that, and then besides that, man, I've just been trying to get everything ready because not only do I have this week of work coming up for the National Guard, but then after that, it's right back into school full time. So yeah, for the rest of the summer, and then that summer semester is going to go right into fall. So I'm just trying to get everything ready for all of that. But
nice.
And at the same time, enjoy myself at the same time and get some little bit of the summer thrown in there. So,
of course.
But yeah, man, I've been good, and I finished watching the Chernobyl miniseries, so that was really freaking good. If you haven't seen the Chernobyl miniseries, go into it with some skepticism because obviously, they adjust
I
some
would say
things
that
for the
they
TV
probably dramatize a
drama.
little bit of it. But
Yeah, like there's people that are like all for truth and all this stuff, which obviously, is to an extent accurate, but at the same time, I mean, people in the Soviet Union, like a lot of the things were just how they are. It was like there's so many people in the show that are like, oh, we have a corrupt, government. Oh my, are you serious? Like, I can't believe the Soviet Union is kind of like people just knew that. Like that was just the way of life for them. So, but besides that, I mean, yeah, it's really interesting. And then like at the very end, like with every, this doesn't spoil anything, but it's just like they have like 10 years later, this happened and this happened. And there's one thing that's like cancer rates had like a huge uptick. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I was like kind of looking up more about Chernobyl and I saw this thing as like, yeah, that's not true at all. Like, so there's some stuff that's like, okay, like how did you kind of get to that? But overall, it's like really interesting to be like, damn,
nice.
When the Soviet Union messes something up, like they messed it up big time, and it's kind of at the same time it is a little sad to see, but it's pretty interesting. It's well done.
Fair enough. Although I will say the only thing you truly missed last week was a great rant that I went on.
Yeah, I heard about that, and I haven't had time to go back and check it out yet. I said I would, and I still will, but yeah, man, I can't say because it had something to do with Star Trek, so I don't think it remind me again what it was about.
It was the rumor going around that Tarantino is still involved with that Star Trek
Yes,
project, but
and a rated R one.
Yeah, but he's going full rated R, typical Tarantino, and I'm like,
which I don't really agree with going rated R just for the sake of going rated R, and to like look at us, we're edgy and hardcore. So I think with that, Star Trek is like, if they actually go through with it, which I don't even think they will, to be honest, I don't think it'll ever come to fruition. But let's say I'm wrong, and let's say it does. I think they're just trying to shed like the nerdy boy thing. It's like, look, guys, come see our movie. We say fucking it like 30 times. And it's like, okay, well.
Yeah, nobody wants that, and neither do I. And
honestly, I mean, if you want to show me some blue alien titties, then I'm cool with that. But I don't think that's what they're going to be doing to make it rated R.
That does sound like something Kirk would do.
Exactly. Like.
Or someone.
Star Trek 2009, she should have just been full nude, dude. Like, come on, bro.
Which one, Uhura or the green chick?
The green chick.
Fair enough.
She should have just been fully naked. I mean, that's what have made the most sense.
Well, especially if they were messing around in bed together. But
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? You're not wrong.
Or it's like, very middle school. That's all.
Or like the or like in Darkness when he's with the two cat looking chicks. Like,
yeah,
come on. But it is what it is, and
Quentin didn't direct those, so that's why.
Exactly.
They didn't say the N-word enough for him to have directed it.
Oh Jesus, here we go. Oh Lord. All right. Well, then let's start hopping into some news. And the first little bit I actually wanted to get into is about the Black Widow movie. And okay, I was already like pretty cool with it. It sounded cool. But just listen to some of this cast that's been added to the film. So the latest edition is Ray Winstone, critically acclaimed actor, much beloved throughout his entire career, joining Rachel Weisz, David Harbour, and Florence Pugh. What? Especially with Florence Pugh, like both Fighting With My Family and Midsummer, which, oh, I'm so excited to see that. But no, like, Nico, you hear about this cast. Does this get you excited at all, or are you still unfamiliar with some of these names?
I haven't seen a lot of what they're in, but I am familiar with who they are.
Okay.
And I mentioned this a couple weeks ago on an episode of Crisis on Earthplex. David Harbour, he did an interview, and I can thank Armin from Comic Book Cast 2, that YouTube channel. He's the one who gave this information. Apparently, David Harbour did an interview, and he said he was very excited to see The Thing make an appearance in the MCU at some point in the future? Now, I don't know if he was talking about he was going to be playing The Thing, or if he was just like he was up and up on the Fox deal and knew that that was something that could happen down the road now, and he was excited for it. But it makes you wonder, is he playing Ben Grimm? Did he say that intentionally to like throw the crumbs out there and just watch the birds flock to it? Or because we know lately Feige and company have been getting really good at messing with us, like even making cuts of movies for the trailers that won't make it into the actual movies because they just want to throw us off completely. See Hulk in the Infinity War trailer. Yeah. Instead, we get the Hulkbuster. So that alone had me excited, but also Florence Pugh. Is she playing Ava Orlova, which is a newer character called the Red Widow, or is she playing like a younger version of Natasha Romanoff? That's another question I've had. Rachel Weisz, could she be playing the Crimson Widow, which is like one of the former Black Widows from the past that they recently name changed so there was no confusion between her and Natasha Romanoff, but like this is the bad guy. And O.T. Fag Benelli, I have no idea who that is. I should probably watch The Handmaid's Tale at some point in time.
But Ryan, you hear about this, and you know, are you excited to see Officer Hopper in the Black Widow movie?
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. I was excited for him to be in Hellboy too until I heard that movie sucked really bad, and I was like, shit. Yeah, I wanted to see that, and it looked cool based off the trailers, but then everyone's like, CGI sucks, and the story sucks, and the acting sucks, and it all sucks, and I was like, oh, shit. So, yeah, I think that he said what he said about The Thing, and, like, the snipers that are constantly trained on him, like, tighten their finger on the trigger, like, don't you say it, motherfucker? And then he didn't say anything, and they're like, okay.
Sorry, there was a random bit of audio that was popping up out of nowhere. What the
okay. UFOs. But anyway, I am excited to hear Ray Winstone get added because, yeah, he's a really good actor. He's funny. And, like, even in shitty movies a la Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, he still makes me laugh. So, you know, if you can bring him into something like this, I feel like he's a worthy addition. And, you know, I kind of want to see him be, like, Black Widow's quick-witted sidekick or something, just like making one-liners like the whole time.
Okay.
Like I really want some sort of like 80s style action thriller out of this. I feel like that could be really fun, but you know, we'll see. Whatever we get, I'm happy with basically because Black Widow isn't like one of my hugely favorite characters. So if it's good, okay, sweet, you know, that's awesome. And if it's all right, then it's just all right, it's all right, you know. But I like the additions.
That's kind of my feeling on the movie too. Like I'm gonna see this movie because the MCU just has been killing it. Like, I can't name an actually bad film they've released since 2013, Thor: The Dark World. But I can,
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
See,
I would count that as bad.
I'm not gonna say I hated it, but because actually I appreciate the construction of the script. I appreciate a lot of the effects, and I appreciate the story being told. I just don't think it was executed as well as it could have been.
Yeah, the villain was super weak, I feel like.
Super weak, yes. We can agree on that one. But, Kees, just shush about Guardians Volume
2. There is some discussion to be had about why is Batista a constant laugh track of himself.
And that is actually 100% fair. But I just feel it's a little bit stronger because we spend a little less time with Quill and a little bit more time with everyone else, which, you know,
it is a Guardians film at that point.
Yes, and because of that, like, it's a little bit stronger in my opinion because, yes, I know, big shock, I don't like Peter Quill, I don't like Star-Lord, blah, 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 blah. All right.
Neither do most of Peter Quill's friends.
Hey, absolutely. All right.
But he's married to Schwarzenegger's daughter, so, I mean, that's pretty badass.
Oh, yeah, no, I have no problem with Pratt. It's just that...
No, I know, I'm just fucking around.
Although, Is that
I
really,
still can't believe that.
although,
Dude.
to be fair, is that really an upgrade from Anna Faris?
Have you seen her? I'd
Eh,
say so.
Touche.
Yeah.
Touche.
Yeah,
All right. Well, speaking of Marvel and the MCU and whatnot, J.J. Abrams,
Hey.
he's got a little movie coming out later this year called Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker.
Little indie flick.
Little indie flick. You might not have heard of it. But he's also got another project he's coming out with soon with his son, Henry, where they will be tackling a 5-issue Spider-Man run. Now, the reason I brought this up is because, we're going to talk more about Abrams in just a second here. But just a quick side thing. Like, is this a good decision for him at the moment? Or is this maybe just trying to keep himself in the public consciousness before Star Wars comes out?
I think it's a good idea.
You know, I think he might have taken this for familial reasons, simply because, like, you know, it sounds more like this is for his son than for him, and they're just using his name to help sell the book by being attached to it. Like, because you know, I have a in terms of the way things work around here in Western PA, my family name is pretty well known. So, like, I have some connections simply by having that last name, and you know, sounds like maybe some connections were made for little Henry to start something on his own. And
Little Henry, you're only 4 years older than him, bro.
Lil Henry.
I don't know. I don't. But it sounds like some family connections were used to make this happen, so Henry could do something. And JJ's name is just, he's helping his son with the first project that he's ever doing on this grand scale.
Fair enough. Ryan, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I see it as like a producer credit almost. You know, I'm sure he had input insofar as, like, you know, Henry, his son, I'm sure was like, hey, Dad, you know, I'm going to make this and blah, blah, blah. Can you hook me up? And he's like, yeah, I'll help you get this made, or I'll help you get into the business type of deal. And then they're like, okay, your son can get his comic published, but we want to put your name on it because that's what's going to sell it. You know, yeah. Abrams is a common enough name where no one's going to know Henry Abrams is J.J. Abrams' son. But everybody roughly knows who J.J. Abrams is. So if you say, here's a 5-issue run of Spider-Man that says, written by J.J. Abrams and Henry Abrams, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it's going to be like. So his name is going to be front and center just to sell more comics, because the comics industry isn't doing that well, all things considered. So I think that it's a good way for them to sell more, and I think it's good for Henry because, you know, he has the connections to get into the business, and good for him for achieving something.
Well, it's funny you bring up the seeming peril of the comics industry, because Nico brought something very interesting to my attention, and yeah, you want to talk about that for a second?
So moving on to the opposite side of the spectrum, DC Comics. For about 26 years, they've had a line called Vertigo, which recently rebranded itself as DC Vertigo, and they actually have a movie coming out in a couple months called The Kitchen, which is based on the Vertigo property of the same name. Mm-hmm. Now, I just found this out right before we went on air, and it looks like DC is going to be closing down its Vertigo line next year.
Wow.
Along with several other things that don't fall under, like, the main DC's lines. So it's just a lot of stuff going on in terms of Warner Brothers, DC, and AT&T in regards to things sort of getting the boot. We already had the news about Swamp Thing a while ago getting the boot. Now it looks like all of the DC Universe streaming service, except maybe for Young Justice, the second half of Season 3, and Season 2 for Titans. It looks like those could be the only things that will still be remaining after 2019 is over. So it
Batgirl
just seems
already
like
got canned.
wait, what?
Or Batwoman that already got canned.
Oh no, that's on the CW, so
Yeah,
that's
that's
going to be
something-
sticking
okay,
around.
okay.
That's going to be sticking around. But nevertheless, it seems like if you're not on the CW, you're not really safe right now. And even in that case, you're kind of not safe. But it looks like the network execs like to keep the shows going simply
And
because
they have a connected universe already established, so that really helps them also, I feel like. Whereas
Exactly.
all these other shows that are coming out on the DC All Access or whatever, that they heavily are relying on their marketing and their word of mouth and stuff like that. So,
But bottom line, it just seems like since AT&T took over, took ownership of Warner Brothers, they don't know what to do with what they have. And when things aren't making the profits that they want, rather than try to make them profitable, they're just like, cut, goodbye. And
it
it's
could be
it's
so.
sad.
But I think also an issue is just with television, excluding films, because you could argue that a million ways and still not arrive at a single conclusion. But for television, I think there's a huge risk of fatigue because of how many DC especially shows are available on, CW plus All Access. There's a ton of shows, but going back to even just the comics itself, which is obviously for Marvel and DC completely separate from anything having to do with what we see on the big screen or the small screen. And that's just and I'll probably get a ton of hate for this. I don't know. Maybe not even enough people watch this show, but I feel like just comics are too damn expensive, dude. Like, I get it. People are trying to make a living. And as an aspiring writer, Chris is an aspiring writer. Nico, I don't know what you do with your life. I'm just kidding.
I like to write from time to time.
I'm just fucking with you, dude. But in all actuality, like, I get it. Like, I would love to write comics. I know for a fact Chris would too. Hell yeah, we would love to write some comics. But
hell,
I think
if all else fails, I might send my scripts to, to comics.
Dark Horse or Marvel or whatever. Yeah, that would be sick. And the issue though is that literally for some of these first-rate comics, it's like $6 an issue, $5 or $6 an issue, and that is freaking expensive, dude. Like $6 for like roughly a 30-page thing that also has ads inside of it. Like, I get it. It's a struggling industry. Not that many people read comics, but I think you got to take a step back and look at, okay, there's reasons why it's struggling. One, yes, people don't read as much as they used to, and people don't read comics as much as they used to. But at the same time, like, prices just keep going up. And I get it. They're trying to stay afloat, and they're trying to make their artists and all these people, because a lot of work goes into these comics. I understand that, but go back to the cheaper, not as good looking paper maybe from the 90s and the 80s and stuff like that. Go back to, not putting so much into the artwork. I don't know how you do it because I've never worked in the comics industry, but I just know as someone who loves to collect them, I kind of had to stop because I'm like, out of all the things, like, I love to read, I can buy an actual book for not much more than I can buy a single issue of Doctor Strange or Scarlet Witch or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, I think that they're hurting themselves with the pricing and what you get out of it.
That was very insightful, Ryan. I like that. And I'm not gonna lie, that took about a little bit more time than I thought we were gonna get to, but you know what? That's fine. That's fine.
I was gonna say, I think we have a lot tonight to fill in. So
That's true. We do actually have quite a bit to fill in. And the reason I brought up that Spider-Man J.J. Abrams thing is because Bad Robot, the company that he is best known for being the head of, looks like it's gonna be getting a new home. With, speaking of Warner Brothers and CW, DC, whatnot, it looks like they'll be heading to Warner Media for upwards of $500 million, which, wow. For how much money Bad Robot has made for Lucasfilm and Paramount? Really? That's it? That's all you're going to pay for it? Okay. But it looks like as part of this deal, though, they'll also be working almost exclusively with Warner Brothers to obviously produce TV shows and movies in the future. And I actually saw a very interesting question asked by the Collider Live folks, where they brought up that there's a possibility that maybe Lost fans who got burned by the ending could get a more satisfactory ending. Who knows? Ryan, I'm pretty sure. Well, okay. I haven't seen Lost. Have either of you two actually seen Lost?
Nope.
I don't think I ever will either.
All right.
When you hear about a show that has a notoriously disappointing ending, it's hard to, be like, oh, I'm going to sit through however many seasons and then most assuredly be disappointed by the end. So, but I will say, as far as Bad Robot, I mean, I think the reason they're so cheap is because they don't necessarily have a ton of properties to their name.
That's also true because they have nothing as far as original stuff. Like they have the Cloverfield films.
Yeah. Which isn't, those are doing okay. I like the Cloverfield films as a concept, but I think Cloverfield was good. 10 was really good, I thought.
Yes.
And then Paradox was just like, ooh.
Yeah, we don't talk about that one.
It doesn't even feel like a Cloverfield movie. Like, I like the really tight, small, constrained feeling of the original two. And then it's like, now we're going to go into space and like basically do an Alien meets Interstellar ripoff. It's like, okay.
So Prometheus?
Oh shit! The internet goes fucking wild. Chris Dohmen just killed everyone.
Oh, don't worry. If Kees were here, he'd be yelling at me right now.
Yeah,
He's probably yelling at me in the chat.
Yeah, Prometheus is good, but still, that was funny. That was a good one.
Goodness. All right. And yes, Thrawn 2K5, always great to see you. How you doing, bro? And I do see that you actually like Paradox. You know what? Next time you're on the show, I actually want to talk to you about that because, like, I've never met anybody who actually liked it.
Prometheus.
No, Cloverfield Paradox.
Oh, my bad. Okay.
But hey, you know what? Maybe if I just hear a fresh perspective, maybe I could come around on it. Who knows? Just like maybe I can finally come around on this stupid Kingsman prequel idea. The King's Man. Oh, man. So, yeah, Disney has slated this movie is going to be coming out. It looks like February 2020. And I'm sorry, guys. I'm just not excited. Even though, just listen to this effing cast coming up. You have Ralph Fiennes. You have Daniel Bruhl, for all you Rush fans and Civil War fans out there. Rhys Ifans, who is always a hoot. I love that man in everything he does. And Tywin Lannister himself, Charles Dance. I want to be excited about this. I really do. But after the shit box that was Kingsman 2, I'm just not. But given that this is supposed to be taking place in about the 40s or the 50s and basically about the invention of the Kingsmen and how that whole little society came to be, Nico, you hear about this. Are you excited at all for this movie or not so much?
I'm not over the moon about it, but I'm not under the moon either. I'm like right at the level of it.
Just walking on the moon.
Yeah, I'm just like, okay, this is something that's happening. We're likely going to get asked a question about it at some point in time, so might as well throw it on the list of things to watch in the future.
All you have to know is that Mark Hamill's head gets blowed up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that did happen. I remember that
Within
scene.
like the first 5 minutes.
First 20, but yeah, whatever, same thing.
Really? It was like the...
Oh no,
soon. That shit was soon.
He's in there for a little bit before he dies.
Okay.
But
all right.
But Ryan, and refreshing Ryan, you also really didn't like the second one, right?
No, hell no.
Okay.
I can't believe I paid for the fucking 4K version. It pisses me off. Yeah, I need to watch it again just because the first one is so good, and I think the second at least bears one more rewatch just to like remember how horrible it was. Basically, probably one time when I'm really drunk, maybe. But the thing about this is okay. I'm trying to weigh in my mind. Like Matthew Vaughn has more hits than misses, right? I think we can agree on that.
Of course.
So but based off of that, I give him the benefit of the doubt. But the name sucks. Okay, so whoever's idea it was to come up with this name, just stop. Like be better. But besides that, I think that there is a chance that this movie could be good, but it needs to get back to what made the first one so good. And that's not like we're just going to throw story completely out the window, make story decisions just to piss people off, and like have nothing that makes any sense whatsoever, have weird characters just for the sake of having weird, obnoxious characters. And putting Elton John in there in probably the least unfunny way to possibly put Elton John in a movie. Like I was like, oh shit. And then I realized how annoying it actually was. I was like, oh shit. Yeah. I was like, fuck, dude. Like, why? He's so amazing. Like, why are you ruining him like this? So I like the era that it's supposed to be set in, and I like the premise. But they just really need to fix the mistake of we're not going to go wacky just to go wacky. Like that's not what made the first one good. It was like a take on James Bond that made it feel more comic book, which it is a graphic novel is what it's based on, instead of just being like, oh, we're going to go straight into silly Funtown land. And it's that's
plus,
not what the fuck
I was about to say, there wasn't a comic book that it was actually based on, right? The second one?
Based on a graphic novel.
No.
The second one, I don't think so. No, I don't think there was a story I think it was an original story for that film, but it was like
it had,
hey, we're gonna make a funny fucking movie.
So like, it had Fantastic Beast syndrome.
I mean, yeah, but the only thing with Fantastic Beasts is like, and yeah, I get okay, Mark Millar, blah blah blah, whatever. But I mean, I think J.K. had the idea for this forever ago, and it's just coming to fruition. I think that I could yap about Fantastic Beasts, those two movies, for an hour, so we'll avoid that. But
I'll say this though, and I'm kind of in my own little island when I say this. I enjoy Mark Strong singing "Country Roads."
Oh hell yeah! It's funny, but yeah. Oh, there goes Chris. So Fantastic Beasts, right? The reason those suck.
All right, fine. I guess I'll finish out the fucking show.
I mean, Nico and I can just talk. I mean, we don't need a host. We don't need you.
I mean, technically, no, you don't. But
I'm just kidding. We do. No, we do.
That's all right. It's all right.
There's a nice conversation we're about to have later that I need you around for. So
yeah, it will be helpful to have me there. I'll just say that. But so we mentioned that. Kind of like Fantastic Beasts and Kingsman 2, the reason those films don't necessarily work as well is because they didn't really have a source material to go off of, which is not the problem that Lionsgate will be having when they start working on a Hunger Games prequel.
What a segue. Oh, my goodness.
Thank you. Thank you. But the reason that is going to work is because Suzanne Collins is currently finishing a prequel novel that will sort of delve into why the Hunger Games came to be. And I'm not gonna lie, even though I like the first one, I like the second one, the third one, fourth one, I'm still excited to see this though, because I want to see what's her take on why society just fucking collapsed. And why we got to where we got to in the first Hunger Games. Now, you guys, you saw the movies?
The first one.
Finish them. But Ryan, talk to me.
So I'm gonna be that annoying douchebag and say that I read the books before the movies came out, and oh my freaking gosh, she is not a good writer in my opinion. I'm sorry. I think that. She's famous because she stole an idea, which, I mean, some of the best people, Thomas Edison, are famous because they stole an idea. But when it comes down to it, okay, fine, you're going to take a lesser known idea and make it your own, stealing from Battle Royale or, I'm sorry, I don't
Which
speak
stole from Rollerball.
Sure, whatever, there's like 1,000,001 ways to cut it. But I think that essentially when you get down to it is like she made it her own in her own way. And the first Hunger Games book is good. The second one is meh, and the third one is trash. And I think that the first Hunger Games movie is not that good. The second one, Francis Lawrence freaking killed it, made a badass movie. The third was so boring that I couldn't bring myself to watch the fourth, and I already knew how it ended. So I was like, all right, fucking, like, what's the point? So if she comes out with a good book, like you said, it's all dependent on the source material in this case. Like, if she comes out with a good book, then okay, great. But I'm just saying, I'm not expecting it because it's like the law of diminishing returns. The more you bring to us, it's like the less and less exciting it gets because it just gets repetitive. And she just tried to do like way too much and like ask too much of the reader to really get on board with. So I'm super not excited for this. I've never been less excited for something except for like the time that I was super sick and I couldn't get off the couch for 3 days.
Okay, perfect. Robert Adams, I see you're in the chat. Welcome, as always, sir. Now, Nico, you said you only saw the first film. Now, when you were watching it, were you at all curious as to how like those events happened, or would you like to see a movie that sort of shows that?
There was definitely a part of me that was like, how did we get to this point that humanity in this particular world is now fighting to get a year's supply of rations for their district? If I have the timeline right, it is a year's supply of rations. Okay. How did we get to that point? And then, yeah, that's probably a good reason why. So I am curious about a prequel for this movie simply because, it doesn't take one standing event. It takes like a series of events with a starting point and to lead to certain things happening. And the prequel sounds like it's going to be the starting point, and then we'll just pick up from there. And I want to see like what was the domino effect that led to I Volunteer's tribute.
Right.
Yes.
Because, I mean, the one that happens in the second, in Catching Fire, that's like the 75th, right? So, I mean, there's been...
Yeah.
Before the first Katniss one, which must have been the 74th, then there were 73 that we haven't seen. So, yeah, you could do, like, all sorts of shit with that, but that doesn't mean it's going to be interesting. But
It's all dependent on
I
how
agree
it's
with you.
executed.
Yeah.
And again, as someone who is mixed on the franchise, I'm curious, but I'll go in with hesitation. So, but with that said, we have 2 more news stories, and we're going to hit the break. And for these last 2, we're going to the horror realm. Yay. First up. Bottom. 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 Bum 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 bottom. Bruce the Shark, the animatronic who scared so many effing people in 1975 and still continues to scare people to this day, is getting a complete makeover with new teeth, new eyes, and is getting completely fixed up to make his debut at the Academy Museum, which will open in 2020. I'm happy about this because if there was ever a prop from a movie that needs the recognition and needs the love and appraisal that it deserves, it's Bruce. Arguably because Jaws, was the quote-unquote the first modern-day blockbuster. Yeah. Come on. Give it some love. Ryan, come join me in my gushing.
I'd say you need this in there. Like, I'd say, like, of all the items that I like, as soon as you say Academy Museum, which, first of all, I'm surprised it doesn't already, it hasn't been around for like a decade or something already. I'm surprised by that. But, okay, so yeah, Bruce, the ruby slippers from Wizard of Oz is, like, obviously a must. And then besides that is, like, I don't even know, like, Paul Walker's car in Fast and the Furious or something. I don't know. But basically, I think that. What do I think? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't really care that much. I'm sorry. I'm just like trying to really feel out like how much I care. It's like actually not that much because yeah, like okay, it's a museum and I'll probably never see it, but and yeah, this movie should get recognition and okay, it's cool that they're fixing up the shark, but it's just a museum. I don't know. It's like it's hard to say. Like the movie is almost like really what matters. You know, I guess I just don't. There's no movie that I'm like, oh, I really want to see the prop that was in the movie. Super bad.
See, okay, normally I'd be with you on that, but there's like 3 or 4 exceptions. Bruce
And that's
the
what I was
Shark
trying
is
to think.
one
It's
of
like,
them.
okay, Bruce, like the ruby red slippers. Like, I don't know.
I would say the original Graflex lightsaber, you know, the original prop from 1977 Star Wars. I would
Yeah,
love.
like original Darth
see
Vader
that.
helmet would be pretty badass, probably.
Oh fuck yeah, absolutely. Nico, any thoughts?
I'm trying to figure out where was Bruce for all this time. If he's just now getting into a museum, was he held up in storage or?
For a few years he was held up in storage, and then he was on display in, I believe, Sydney, Australia for the better part of a decade. And then yeah, now he's making his return back to the U.S. to go live, to go do what Indiana Jones always says: that belongs in a museum.
I'm expecting the theme to be playing at the display
That
when
would
it
be
finally
fun.
gets to the museum because because listen, Jaws would not have worked if not for the score. It would not be considered one of the scariest movies of its generation if not for that score and John Williams just being able to showcase like the terror, the suspension of this sea beast coming out of nowhere and eating ships whole.
That
And
never fucking worked. The shark, it never worked.
Right, yeah.
that is also true. But yeah, so the music, you got to put it in the display in the background, playing at all times, so people can understand. Like just having that in your ear, that's what made this such a successful movie, and this is why you can't have the prop without the sound for it.
So does that mean that Dan Murrell should host a Jaws Schmodown exhibition match at the Academy Museum when that opens up, and they play that music in the background the whole time?
I don't know where we're gonna get the budget for that. I mean, they don't even have the Shmuno doesn't even have the budget yet for its own new studio outside of Collider. So, baby steps.
Not Collider
Yeah,
anymore. They're on their own. Remember, they just
Well,
rent out the studio.
Yeah, and they're looking for their own studio.
Well, that's what he's
so
saying. They don't have one outside of the Collider studio that they rent. Yeah.
Touche.
I think they should have John Williams on retainer to just play it constantly. Just like conduct the score the whole time.
Isn't John Williams like set to retire after the
he's
Rise
like
of Skywalker?
mid-80s,
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like
The
90,
dude's a legend.
93, 94. Yeah, he's had his career. He can call it good after Rise of Skywalker, and we'll miss the fuck out of him. But yeah, no, that
I could see him doing like coming back for like 1 or 2 more before, like you know what I'm saying?
maybe the
you
last
might quit,
maybe
like-
the last Indiana Jones.
something along those lines. Yeah, something big. Yeah.
But yeah, so we're gonna hit one last news story, then we're gonna hit the break, and again, I wish I had my piano hooked up so I could play a different famous horror theme. Halloween 2, set to finally start shooting this fall for a 2020 release with Jamie Lee Curtis back, as well as Judy Greer and the actress who played the granddaughter. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. My apologies. I just
Is
know
it
that,
Andy Matichak?
that sounds right. That sounds
Because
right.
that's what I'm reading right here in the article.
All right. Yes, thank you, Nico. I appreciate that.
Thanks
Professionalism.
for making the rest of us look like shit with your show prep.
Now, Nico, what am I going to have to do to convince you to watch the Halloween franchise?
Was the first one that came out last year? Scale 1 to 10. Like, How scary was it? Was it jump scary, or was it like terrifying?
Okay, there's like 2 or 3 actual jump scares, but the rest of it is just really great suspense.
Maybe I'll give it a chance and add it to the list. Again, I'm trying to broaden my horizons.
I will watch it with you if you need me to.
I love how I'm being treated like a baby who needs his hand held. That's always fun. Good God.
Oh my God, K-Wolf, that's terrible. That is terrible.
What does he say?
K-Wolf in the chat says, Chris, we're just going to have to tie him down. Oh my God. No, come on. That's just mean. We're not going to do that to Nico.
This isn't Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Ryan, you excited for Halloween too?
Yeah, actually I am, because, and this is like, it pains me to admit, I still haven't gotten around to any of the Halloween movies. I think I want to watch the original one and then the one that just came out. Yeah, I know, Chris. I know. I'm a piece of shit. But
No, not that. I'm just surprised. Like,
I need to get around to it because I really do want to see them. They
hell,
do look
Kees
really good.
watched the first one before you did. What the hell?
Yeah. Well, I don't know why. I don't know why he did. I mean, there's a lot of classic horror that I need to still see. Like
talked
The
him
Hills
into it.
Have Eyes and all sorts of shit like this. So, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all this stuff. I don't know. I'm also not into some of those like really nutso, like torture porn, gore fest type movies. So I think that Halloween will be okay, and I'll probably. And it's not even like a scary thing. It's just like, why, it's like kind of like, why would I watch these? But I think Halloween I'm gonna get around to before this one comes out, because I do want to see the new one, because it really interests me that they made a good one. The fact that after all these years they're finally able to get back around to making a good one, and I like David Gordon Green, so for that reason I'm in.
Now to be fair with him, as far as I know, he's only writing the script. He's not necessarily directing it, but that could change, because obviously they still have another 2-3 months before they start shooting. Anything could happen, but yes, I quite liked 2018's Halloween. I had my issues with it, and it wasn't a perfect movie, but overall, I really quite liked it. And the thing is, and Nico, here's a little tip for you. Most films that qualify as slashers, they're not really scary.
They're gory, more so.
They're gory, and they're just crazy. And there is a formula to it, and of course, for people like me, that formula always works. It's whether it's Friday the 13th or Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street. And that's the other thing too. They're really good at building atmosphere and suspense. Whether or not it pays off all the time, see Friday the 13th Part 5 or Halloween 5. But they're usually pretty good at keeping it just simple enough that it's guaranteed to work. But yeah, so that's where that lands. And holy shit, I'm very happy to see that the chat is just been going crazy all night. This is awesome. And hell, Kees is telling you to watch A Nightmare on Elm Street, Nico. That's because that's a movie he actually likes.
A Nightmare on Elm Street?
I think I can handle slashers, but it's when they get into the demonic possession and things coming out of walls and bugs all over the place. That's where it goes too far for me.
So obviously you're not going to be watching The Conjuring anytime soon, which fair enough.
That's a good one.
That is a good one. I really like that.
And actually a classic a classic horror movie that I did watch not that long ago, and obviously it's like more of like a joke horror movie, but still, was The Evil Dead. That one's really good. Like the original, yeah, like
yes.
Sam Raimi student film type. So I need to
with
keep
Bruce
watching.
Campbell. With Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
That I think I could.
It was funny as hell, dude.
Oh
like,
yeah,
it's scary. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely some weird shit going on. Yeah,
absolutely.
But it's funny.
You
too.
could handle it. You could definitely handle it.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, I'm pretty sure, like, I got you excited to watch my favorite horror movie of all time, which is The Descent, so... But, yes, guys, we are going to take a quick 5-minute break, and as soon as we get back, Ryan, we have something that we have to get off our chest. And we are long overdue for making this happen. Put them up.
We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes.
Guys, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We'll see you shortly. Okay. Let's start this off the right way. People hated the fact that there's F-bombs in Star Trek Discovery. They hated that shit.
I was contacting him. We're against. We just.
And on top of that, if honestly, if you're gonna go so cynical with the Star Trek universe as to simply say that, oh, well, people just don't believe in diplomacy anymore. Now it's their way or the highway, and it's gonna be that way. That's the shit that I'm not a fan of in the Abrams films. I'm sorry. But the thing about Star Trek is we're supposed to be fucking better than that. And if we're not fucking better than that, then what the fuck are we trying to criticize in the now? That's why you have them try to be a perfect society. So that way we can fight the shit that we're doing right now. Fuck!
Every band is influenced by people that came before them.
Yeah.
But the thing with Queen is they have such a wide, array or such a wide audience that I think over the years they've had a huge influence. Like I know Guns N' Roses, Megadeth, and I know who else I'm trying. Oh, Marilyn Manson was one that I remember being kind of surprised when he was like, Queen being a huge, and then Michael Jackson as well.
Yeah.
So they, and Lady Gaga too. That was another that I remember reading about where like Queen.
Lady Gaga literally named herself after a song of Queen.
Right, exactly. So you have, these, because a lot of those are acts that are known for their, antics, especially Lady Gaga, Michael Jackson. It was all about, and Marilyn Manson. It's all about.
I don't think you're crazy. And, granted, I will say you had an idea of where the Team Action Civil War was going to go, and it didn't go the way you thought it would. So, but I'm kind of with you on, like, it feels like one more loss from someone from corruption or two losses, depending on how things play out on Saturday. And that might be the official split of the faction itself. I had something I was going to say, and I just oh, right. I do remember, though, that Kalinowski waited a long time to finally break away from the League. The League being his faction with Roxy and
Laquasto and Gertler, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe he's like he's a patient man when it comes to making certain decisions. He likes to wait in storyline for things to play out before he makes a rash call.
Okay, he is. Ken's not. Because the minute that Ken got something about Dagnino at Collision last year, Ken split. And then tried to start up the Knights of Ken. And what happened to that? They went nowhere.
Because Anarchy completely threw those plans off the table. Mm-hmm. But we've spent a little too much time talking about corruption and where they're going to go. So let's give some credit to the three other people in the match. Starting off with the winner, Brandon Hanna. We knew he had potential. He lived up to that potential in this match, and now he's officially a member of the Inner Geekdom division.
Cruiser Ninko?
Ninka.
July 20th, San Diego Comic-Con, you're going to see the Inner Geekdom champion Rachel the Crusher Cushing. She will put that title on the line, and it will be against, that's right, the Smasher, Kevin Smets or Mike Kalinowski, who will win.
We're 2 matches away from a championship belt. I'll make sure Kalinowski lives up to his name KO when I knock him out.
You got this new breed that's come on up here, and they're bringing their A game. But they're just beginning, and Kalinowski's going to be the one taking on Rachel and San Diego.
You're a bump in the road, my title.
Comic-Con, that's where the next defense is going to be. That's where we're going to be on the other side of that table, getting that belt back.
If he wants to lose for a 4th time to me, bring it.
July 20th, Saturday. You can get tickets right now at theshowdownlive.com.
And welcome back to the second half of the Who Cares Anyway podcast. So, to give a little context about why the thumbnail is the way it is and why the show is the way it is, a long time ago, back on the Keanu Reeves episode, Ryan and I exchanged a few short words about a band that he and I have very mixed feelings on. Because we were talking about a band that we both really love, but, then we started talking about one that we have a little bit mixed feelings on. And what I wanted to just get this on air so that way, you guys can laugh at us being stupid music nerds and having fun. And Nico is going to sort of moderate with our little debate here. But here's the thing. This debate really wouldn't last really that long. So what I actually want you guys to do in the chat, if there's any other, big, quote-unquote, controversial topics in the world of movies, music, TV, and we could be able to get into it, shoot them out. Shoot them in the chat. And let's get into it. So to set this up, we've all had some good times, bad times. There's a little bit of a communication breakdown. If we were to, I don't know, let's say go to Kashmir or something.
I mean, when the levee breaks, it doesn't matter. So.
Exactly. So, all right. I have a little bit of an issue with just sort of how the rock world, just like with the Beatles, completely sucks Led Zeppelin's dick dry every single time. I don't get it. And keep in mind, I will never say that Led Zeppelin are bad. Not by no means am I saying that. They are one of the most influential rock bands of the 20th century. Dear fucking Jesus. But I think that there are a lot of bands who have done what they've done, but did it better. And I do mean that in every single department of them as a band. Now, Ryan, before I get too much further into my points, why don't you give us a little bit of a early example? Some of your defense, if you should.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm at least insofar with you as far as the Beatles are not that great. So we agree there. And so I can at least understand, right, based off of that, where you're coming from as far as, there are so many bands out there that get elevated to a certain status where you could say that maybe they don't deserve it. But I think where you have a huge difference between a band such as the Beatles and a band such as Led Zeppelin is the Beatles did not create the pop genre. That existed. Really all they did was play it in a slightly different sound that was more digestible to a younger audience and was faster paced, and it wasn't, some sleepy, this isn't how I feel because I love big band, but it wasn't some sleepy big band jazz that, their parents danced to when they met at the fall formal in 1947, So it's a completely different thing, and it's changing with the times. Here's the difference, though, and this is why I think that you're wrong insofar as Led Zeppelin being overrated, is that they literally created an entirely new genre. Yes, rock and roll existed, but they didn't play rock and roll. They played straight up rock. They were the first actual, not the, hey, this is some Elvis, it's fast paced and it's going and it's really getting, but, there's that roll element where it's kind of swingy and here's this. And, sure, there are certain songs, but overall, when you look at, yeah, well, music majors and whatever, but when you look at Led Zeppelin bringing a completely different sound into it, I think that's where you're wrong saying they're overrated, because I think the amount of what they accomplished stands as a testament to why everyone is so obsessed with them.
Well, and now to further get into just why I'm so Mr. Controversial about this, so I said I was going to mention piece by piece. Now, John Bonham was an incredible drummer. May he rest in peace. Coming up on 40 years now. Holy shit. But I think that there are drummers who have done more for the entire world of drumming as their careers have gone on. Now, granted, John Bonham wasn't around long enough to actually have made as big of a difference as he could have, and that is 100% fair. But take a look at drummers like Stuart Copeland, Chris Adler, Neil Peart. These are people who have completely reinvented rock, metal, and whatnot drumming, in my opinion. Take a look at Jimmy Page. Now, this is the one thing that I will never argue. Jimmy Page is one of the greatest riff crafters of all time. I'll never take that away from him. And if someone says he is the greatest riff maker of all time, I'm not going to fight you. No. As a lead guitar player, though, I can name 20 guitar players who can rock a solo better than Jimmy Page. Sorry. Now, Robert Plant, he's a very talented vocalist. But usually when I hear people cover his songs, like Hart did at the Kennedy Center Honors when they did Stairway to Heaven, and I will have my own fight about that song here in a moment. Oh, you weren't a fan of that cover.
Hart? No.
Wow, ouch. I felt her passion way more than I have felt his in any version of that song. Or, hell, excuse me. Hearing Taylor Hawkins, kind of badly, I'll admit, but still, I felt a little bit more of that passion. Taylor Hawkins, drummer for the Foo Fighters, for people in the chat who don't know him. He brought a level of passion that I don't really hear that much in Robert Plant's vocal delivery. Now, granted, on something like Whole Lotta Love, yes, he gets very into it. So much so that I'm convinced he's having an actual orgasm mid-recording.
He was the original David Lee Roth.
He was. He was totally the original David Lee Roth. But, you know, tis what tis. And again, I'll say my big beef on the final thing. But Ryan, did you have another point you wanted to hit back at me with?
Yeah, I'll walk it backwards from where you basically start with the end there, and I would say, you know, before everyone hates on me, I mean, they're going to hate on me anyway, but just to explain why you hate me is I just am not a huge fan of covers anyway. There's really only one cover that I like better than the original, and that's Stevie Ray Vaughan's cover of Jimi Hendrix's Little Wing, and that's just because it's essentially a completely different song. I mean, he takes some of the guitar melodies and then he just turns it into a blues guitar freak out, and it's amazing. You know, it's really nothing. It's not the same song at a certain point, and that's why it's completely different. And maybe there might be some others out there that I can't think of, but that's the one I generally stand by as to, like, that's why I was so opposed to you saying Heart or anyone really. I'm not the biggest Heart fan, but also I just don't like covers in general, because I look at, you know, like everyone, and Chris, you know, this may be you and no hate, but, and this is maybe a different argument for a different time, but Disturbed's cover of The Sound of Silence, like,
I think it's fine. I don't really.
My dad says it's better, and I'm just like, but how? Like, how? Yeah, like Simon Garfunkel wrote the song. Like, yes, it's different, and maybe he gives more energy to it, but it's a song void of that energy. And to me, that's what makes Simon and Garfunkel's version so interesting, is like how quietly and even keeled it is, while still having that like melancholy to it and almost like a foreboding sense. So when we take it back to Stairway to Heaven and other such songs, it's this band's energy or lack thereof in certain places that make it to be what's so interesting. The build up all throughout Stairway to Heaven, to me, is inimitable, because you're always just doing what someone else did for you in your own way. You see what I'm saying? Like, if you make eggs, sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well,
I was just gonna say, if you make like the best eggs, like you're freaking Gordon freaking Ramsay, and you make the best eggs, and then I put salt on top, like I've automatically made them better. You know what I'm saying? Like, all I had to do was put some salt on top, and then some idiot's gonna be like, well, these taste better. Like, well, yeah, because I did the most simple thing to it, because you already know eggs, but then you change it up a little bit. It's like, oh shit, So that's why I'll never like covers. But
which is funny you say that because you like When the Levee Breaks, right?
Yeah.
That's a cover.
And you're going to say, I know, but it's not the same. And this is what I'm getting at. If you take something and it becomes something completely different and it's not even the same.
Much like All on the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix.
Yes, thank you. That's actually another example of a song that I like. Thank you. I knew there was other examples. I just couldn't think of them. And that is absolutely one of there's no comparison in my mind. You listen to the original and you're like, huh? So... To me,
although again, there's a little secret. I'm not a Hendrix guy either. Sorry.
Well, I like Hendrix, for a lot of his stuff. Just I think that when it comes to Little Wing, it's like a short 3-minute song versus a 6.5 minute, like I said, blues guitar just freaking going for it. It's a completely different thing at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So, now I'm just gonna get this out right now.
Well, actually, if I can just say one thing before you get to your before you blow your load or whatever, because you got to talk about John Bonham, who is ultimately, he makes Zeppelin. And the only thing I wanted to add on to what you said is in your mind, what's that?
Please elaborate on that point, because I'll argue it's Page and Plant who make Zeppelin, not so much Bonham.
I mean, no matter what band you're talking about, right? The front man is going to be what everyone thinks of, if you're talking about
Aerosmith, you think of Steven Tyler. When you say Queen, you think of Freddie Mercury. When you say Fleetwood Mac, you think of Stevie Nicks.
Which, shameless plug, Kees, Cornelisse and I actually talk about Freddie Mercury and Queen and the difference between the perceptions and all of that and stuff on Down-Tune Dissection episode 4. Go check that out right now. But to that point, you're always going to think of that. And then, of course, everybody hears the guitar. It's out in the front. It's very melodic and it's catchy and it gets you pumped up and all that. And I will agree that, Jimmy Page obviously is a product of his times to his detriment. The fact that he started out in a band like the Yardbirds, which was very much more rock and roll, they weren't coming out to, the Immigrant Song. But he wrote the Immigrant Song, you see what I'm saying? There's just sometimes there's something about it to where you're doing as much as you can at the time. And of course, he's not freaking Dave Mustaine, Tornado of Souls, just shredding the freaking guitar strings off the fretboard because, there's a difference between 1970 and 1990. It's not the same. You can't compare them. Just things change and people learn. So... And people are constantly pushing themselves. And then you can't compare Tornado of Souls to freaking some of the metalcore that comes out now. It's just there's so much difference in how people learn. But the final thing, and then I'll shut up for a little bit, is not Tornado of Souls, freaking John Bonham. He took the jazz guitar sensibilities of people like Gene Krupa or Buddy Rich, and it's this very, he has the triplets on the hi-hats and all this to where he's kind of doing... almost some double pedal movements with a single pedal before anybody had even really considered it. Yeah, exactly. When you look at songs like
Good Times, Bad Times.
Bad Time. Wow, could you not say the same thing as me, please? I'm just kidding. We're synced up. So to get to my point, though, and Polyphonic, I will admit that some of my knowledge I did steal from them. I was going to put my little footnote as if this were an essay in high school. Go watch the Polyphonic video on YouTube about John Bonham. And this is part of what informed that.
I've seen that video, actually.
And it's freaking awesome because he just did so much to bring them together as a whole. And he's what really changed. What is going on? It's anarchy over here. I'm sorry, guys. My phone was ringing or something. But
That's fine.
He's what really changed the sound itself. Because you're right. Robert Plant was just yelling into a microphone. And Jimmy Page was a sort of a product of his time. And John Paul Jones did the best with what he had. But it was John Bonham who really pushed the limits and set the stage for, might I remind you, Rush, who originally was essentially just, with their first self-titled album, a Led Zeppelin cover band, basically. And then they were like, all right, we need to change up our sound. And they hired Neil Peart, who, took a lot of his sensibilities from John Bonham, but thankfully had more of a philosophical leaning towards his lyrics, and that really sent them into the stratosphere. and they're my favorite band, in case you can't tell. But, all I'll say is, in this sense, I think that if you're going to say that they're overrated, at least say everyone else is except for John Bonham.
All right, and you know what? From that perspective, I actually won't fight you on that because,
Yay.
again, a lot of my favorite drummers, they got their inspiration from John Bonham, and then they just took what he was able to give us with the time he had, and in my opinion, they just improved on it. Again, like a Neil Peart, or like a Chris Adler, or a Blake Richardson from Between the Buried and Me. Oh my God, he's just so fucking great. Sorry. But I think where a lot of my, resentment towards Zepp comes from, it comes from one fucking song. And it's the fucking song. I will never understand the complete cock-slobbering, butthole-licking, ball-fondling love for Stairway to Heaven.
Oh my goodness, it's X-rated up in here, ladies and gentlemen.
Because, okay, the opening riff, yeah, it's cool. It's it's a nice little bit of major and minor chord changes. It's nice. Robert Plant is singing nonsensical lyrics, but it does build a story, kind of, ish. Like, you can't tell if he's trying to make a tribute to Janis Joplin or not, but sure. And then it builds. It gets very cool when John comes in with that really simple groove, but it works great. Hell, Kashmir, as I mentioned, that is one of the coolest fucking riffs I've ever heard in my life because John Bonham is just doing a straight 1, 2, 3, 4. His kick never goes more than the eighth notes, but it's the guitar that does all the work. But then we come to, ba-na-na, da-na-na, da-na-na, wow, okay, yeah, sure, this is cool, this is fun, this is exciting. But what was the point? The lyrics are all fucking over the place. And nobody wants to acknowledge that because, yes, I know, this is 1970, or 1973
no, you're right.
to be precise.
Yeah.
And look, I get it, and that I'm very much I don't see it, especially again coming back to when I've heard it done better. Now here, let me provide an example. Blackbird by Alter Bridge. That is also a fantastic opening riff with lyrics that tell a consistent story. So, yes, in case you guys can't tell, when it comes to my love for music, it mostly comes to a lot of lyrics. Musicality plays a big part of it too, but lyrics are what drive me to want to come back. That's why I'm such a big Linkin Park fan, because I loved a lot of their lyrics. And of course, Mark Tremonti's fucking solo in Blackbird. It's so fucking beautiful. But, Jimmy Page, I'm just gonna come all over this track. Okay. All right. But yes, that's kind of just my that's always been like my personal bullshit. So Ryan, please tell me why I am
I'll
wrong.
be gentle. One, again, just to knock it out of the way before I beat a dead horse, is it's still, you got to think about a product of a time sort of situation. There's just songs that, no, not even that, because that's really just not what it is anymore. I mean, there's just songs that get blown into the stratosphere for whatever reason, unpredictable. Is All Star by Smash Mouth even close to a good song? Hell no. You're talking about needing good lyrics. You must be a huge fan of Old Town Road, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
sometimes songs, a lot of times songs just get blown into the stratosphere just because, you know, somebody decided along the way that in order to be cool, you have to like that song generally. And, you know, they start playing it at middle school dances, and then people are like, ooh, wow, this song is so great. And it's like rediscovered over the generations, and it's fun to play on the guitar because it's not that hard, but it's, you know, hard enough to where it seems like you know what you're doing type of deal. And so when it comes down to it, you think about it when it actually first came out and you look at what's being done, I would say that it is a good guitar solo. Again, it is not Tornado of Souls. It is not Orion. It is not any fucking other thing you want to talk about. Like, this isn't Veil of Maya or fucking some crazy, like, converged mathcore polyrhythms and you're doing algebra just in order to play a freaking guitar solo. Like, it's literally just, he's like, what sounds good and what feels right to me when he's playing that solo. And that's where you get, okay, that is what it is. And if you don't like it, well, you're just not as smart as Jimmy Page, I guess. But I'm just kidding. But as far as
maybe I'm not.
I think why it's so loved is like lyrics, they can just be like philosophical mush. Like, they don't really need to mean as much as, like, you can infer what meaning from that song you want to, and that's perfectly fine, which, you know, maybe again, as like an English major, I'm more okay with just like, why is the door red? Well, because, you know, somebody shit blood yesterday. Like, you can make whatever inference that you want to from the lyrics of this song. But what it really comes down to for me is that build up. And the best thing about songs that build are when you finally get that sort of resolution. So, you know, my favorite Led Zeppelin songs are When the Levee Breaks and Achilles' Last Stand, because those are like constantly building and building and building, and they shift and they change and they turn and they become something completely different by the end. And they are, in their own way, sagas that tell their own story. Where I like but don't
Respect
love.
on Achilles, by the way.
Thank you. I actually only recently, like a couple years ago, found out that song was. I've heard it before, but never thought it was that great. It was always pretty long, and it still is long. But when you really sit down and listen, you're like, oh shit, son. But as far as Stairway, while I will agree that, of course, everyone, I think, or you know, everyone that's a Zeppelin fan to some extent goes through a period of like, whoa, this song is so freaking amazing. Is there a better song? The answer is yes. But I think it's good because you just get like this somber buildup of you're getting somewhere, and you can make what inferences you want to from the lyrics, and you get some interesting finger picking that resolves itself. Like, that's the thing, is like they have other songs that sound distorted and out of beat and out of tempo, like When the Levee Breaks. But then you have this song where it's just a song. It's just a song, and that's all it needs to be. And when it gets to, you know, Robert Plant screeching his heart out and Jimmy Page doing what he wants on the guitar, it's like, I think that does represent ultimately the band as a whole kind of reaching. I mean, Led Zeppelin 4, to me, is their best album overall. And this song being featured on that, I think it's on the end of side A, unless I'm very much mistaken. So it's a good way to end that first half of the album. And then, you know, then you can get your When the Levee Breaks to really finish it out at the end of the other side. And that's, you know, that's its own song. And I think, sorry if I, but I think that where I say, like, if you're going to say a band is overrated all because some popular culture people over the course of 40 years or whatever decided that this is their best song just because everyone thinks it's the best song to listen to because maybe it's their most impressive easy song to listen to, that doesn't mean that the band as a whole is overrated. Because opposite to that, the reason I would say someone like the Beatles or Avenged Sevenfold are overrated is because the entirety of their discography doesn't match up to the level that they're brought to be like, oh, we are not worthy. Whereas like you look at Led Zeppelin as a whole, and the hard part too is they don't have as many albums really. They only have like, what is it, like 7 or 8, and some of them are kind of like Physical Graffiti is a lot of re-releases and stuff like that. So you can't even really count that as a full album, Kashmir aside. So all this to say, because I know Nico's getting bored, is that
Sorry, Nico.
I'm legit trying to analyze all the points being made. So
he's trying. Oh, he's gonna declare a winner. Ooh, okay, all right. I'm okay with losing.
Well,
No.
this was a debate. You put me in charge
True.
as the moderator, so
True.
that's.
I'm glad you took your job seriously. That's
Please.
awesome. So, just in closing, all I will say is that I think when you look at the entirety of their discography, I think you can find enough material there to merit just how revered they are.
Well, see, though, in my opinion, you could say that about like any artist.
Okay, that's his final point.
All right, yes.
That's his final point.
That's my final point.
Yes.
All right,
I'm done
Okay.
talking.
No, all I'm gonna say to just to close out this little bit is this, where I've in the history of my time as a musician, I have never taken away the talent that any band that I listen to. I always try to keep that in perspective of like, okay, am I clearly hearing that there is talent in this record? Yes, and this is true of even some bands that I despise, like Megadeth, Slayer. Sorry, it's
Slayer, I agree with you on that.
Thank you. But there is talent there. Dave Lombardo is one of the best metal drummers ever. It's just that Tom Araya sounds like he's trying to give himself a stroke, like every line. But you actually brought up a great point where when a band is, like a band is more talented than the songs they're putting out, Maroon 5, they become overrated. And the thing is, Led Zeppelin, they never had that problem. But I guess the reason that I feel as strongly as I do is because I have heard them do great songs with great riffs and great lyrics. I just haven't heard that throughout as much of their discography as other people have. Because, again, When the Levee Breaks, holy fuck. If that song isn't one of the best songs to come out of the 70s I have ever heard. Dear Jesus. And Thrawn, yes. Dream Theater, ugh. So overrated.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't even know why they're a band, dude. Shit.
But when I'm hearing people like Jimmy Page who are putting their all into a track, like let's say Black Dog, and it just still is not working for me, then I don't know. Maybe I'm just too harsh of a critic, or maybe I just have too much of a particular style that I'm looking for. But then again, for a band that is as universally beloved as Led Zeppelin is, then shouldn't I get it after listening to their entire discography? But I still don't? Am I crazy?
My mom hates them.
And my mom's not necessarily a huge fan of them either. And yeah, and actually you mentioned, like with the Beatles, I listen to their early stuff when I'm writing. Why? Because it's super easy to listen to, and I can just, just have something playing in my ears so I can just focus on my typing. I wish that, I could do that same thing with Led Zeppelin, at least to give them that kind of credit. And unfortunately, I just can't. And they're a band I want to be able to get into, but it doesn't work for me on any level, really. Because again, I've heard bands do what they do, but do it better, in my opinion. So that's my closing bit. Now, guys, I did say, if there are other things you want us to tackle as far as debate topics, hit us up in the chat. So Ryan, thank you for a great for a great fight.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Okay. All right, here.
Do you have like a little card you can hold up?
How do I want to break this down? Okay, so basically the way I saw it was, Chris, you were making an argument as to why you personally and you alone have issues with Led Zeppelin. And I didn't say dislike, I said have issues with, because it sounds like you actually do like the work they put out, just you like others a little bit more. And Ryan, he approached this from the perspective of, here's why a good majority of people like them, and I just happen to be one of those people. And Chris, you listed a lot of your tastes and how you focus a lot on the story. But Ryan, he brought up an excellent point in that there are a lot of popular songs out there in which the lyrics don't make a lick of sense, but people still love them anyway. See Smash Mouth's All-Star. Or anytime I'll go to karaoke, I'm singing I Want It That Way by the Backstreet Boys. The lyrics make...
yes, we need a video.
The lyrics make absolutely no fucking sense whatsoever, but I love the song to death. That validates Ryan's argument even more. And the fact that, Chris, you kept saying, I don't dislike them as much as I'm making this out originally. You kept kind of conceding the whole point of having this argument at all and just brought it back to that one song of Stairway to Heaven, and how you even said there are a lot of great portions of the song and they just ham it up a little bit from time to time. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I feel like Ryan had the better overall argument going for him here. And it sounds like you were just kind of saying, I am that one guy who dislikes the most popular kid in recess. And by the way, for those of you who watched the old Disney show Recess, there was an episode where TJ was trying to get the one kid out of the whole school that didn't like him. He was trying desperately to get the kid to like him. It did not work out, and he was ridiculously nice to the kid, and the kid was just like, you seem like a nice guy. I just don't like you. So I feel like that's kind of where Chris was coming from in this whole situation. It's like he's letting that one song where he feels like it's overrated get the better of his judgment of this whole band. And granted, you can have other bands that you like more. Like you can like Nutella a little bit more than peanut butter. There's nothing wrong with that. But Ryan laid out the better overall argument here.
I'm not going to fight him on that.
Good, because he's the moderator. You can't debate the moderator.
Of course not. Although, it's funny that you mentioned that, because there actually was something that we were talking in the chat amongst ourselves earlier today. And, Nico, I'm just going to come out and say it. Why do you defend the ending of Rebels as strongly as you do?
Why do I defend Rebels overall, or why do I defend certain parts of
just the series finale? Because I love the show, even though not every episode works. Some of it is crap. AP5 singing sucks. I don't care what anyone says.
Okay, so all right, here's what we'll do. So since I'm gonna obviously moderate this one, Nico, you go first. You're going to have, because we only have so much time left on the show, I'm going to give you 3 minutes. That should be substantial for your opening remarks starting now.
Okay, so in regards to the finale, the big complaint seems to be that Ezra used space whales to drag Thrawn like a million light years through the galaxy to who knows where. And now, and like several years later, we get that ending of Sabine narrating everything and saying, oh, myself and Ahsoka, we went off to find where Ezra went. But the problem just goes back to those space whales. And the reason why I'm okay with it is because it's been established throughout the 4 seasons leading up to that moment in time that Ezra had a strong connection to the natural side of the Force, to plants and animals. More so animals, but you get the idea. And, he started developing that relationship with the Loth cats, then the Loth wolves. And so it makes sense to me that he would establish some kind of connection with those space whales. And he would be like, hey, listen, there's a guy in the galaxy that's doing bad things. Those bad things are going to affect you and also your food supply because you rely on fuel to survive. How about you do me a favor and help me do the sacrificial thing of where I take Thrawn out of the conflict, no longer in the picture, so the rebellion can have a fighting chance. And I'm perfectly fine with that. One, because it's a kids show, and so you can get away with sort of wacky stuff like that, but also because it was established in the narrative for the past 4 seasons up to now. So there was a storyline purpose for that happening. It wasn't just for laughs, although it might have gotten a few laughs because, again, it's a show targeted for kids as they're maturing as they watch the show. Because that's kind of how the Clone Wars was. People grew up as the show went on, and the same can be said about Rebels, and the same will be said about Resistance if it gets more than one more season. People will be growing up to the events of that show, and so they will mature with those characters and follow them along their journey and understand, this is where Ezra
Join my ship.
Ezra started out as just this kid who had a weird connection with a Lothcat, and now he's built up his connection to the Force so strongly that he can do this with such a large creature and in such a ridiculous manner that it works.
So I think we're trying to fight on 2 different things here. Because am I disagreeing with you on anything you just said? No. They did set it up, and they set it up quite brilliantly. But I don't like how, well, first off, I don't like how they left that aspect to it open-ended. I didn't like that there wasn't a definitive close to Ezra's arc. Like, if he was going to die, kill him. If Thrawn was going to die, kill him. The fact they don't bugs me. And because I don't know if the Mandalorian is going to, answer those questions. I don't know if Resistance is going to answer those questions. I don't know if those questions will ever get answered. That's where my problem comes from. Because the Purrgil, it's a little convenient, but it makes sense because, as you mentioned, Ezra's been building this connection with nature throughout the entire show, and it absolutely makes sense. It totally works. But my other big thing is we have this lovely little plot hole, and his name is Jason Syndulla. When did that happen? How did it happen? Where did it happen? How?
Now, here's the thing. When I saw
Filoni has said jack shit about that.
When I saw that part, I had questions as well because, obviously it takes 2 to tango. When did Hera and Kanan tango? But also, we don't really know the biological mechanics of the female Twi'lek and her reproductive system. So
let's assume it's normal. Human.
It actually is fairly similar to a human's. And granted, this is according to Legends, but I can assume that they would just pull that from Legends to put it in canon.
This isn't Avatar.
Exactly.
James Cameron movie.
Right.
The shitty.
But again, you're going to Legends canon, and that's no longer canon.
So let's say for the sake of this argument that bipedal.
Is it truly 9 months, or could it be 2 years? And also, you got to think about they're in space. Every planet has its own cycle of what a day is, what a week is, what a month is, what a year is. So, for all we know, a day on Lothal could be much shorter than a day on Mustafar, or vice versa. So, at what point? The
problem with that argument, though, is that the galaxy as a whole, and this has been established in the Republic for tens of thousands of years, they do run on an established single calendar. And granted, not every single planet runs the same, but as a galaxy as a whole, they do technically run on one calendar.
Well, what about those galaxies in the Outer Rim, the ones that are no longer in Republic or Imperial reach?
You can't
do they follow
You can't make the argument for Lothal, though.
Fair enough. But basically, I think I just lost with that one facial expression.
Keep in mind, this is not a competition. We're just having a discussion about it.
Yeah.
We're having a debate about it. And like,
But okay, let's go back to like why did they leave it open ended for a second, and we can talk about Jason in a moment.
oh my God, Thrawn, what the hell?
But in regards to why did they leave it open ended, Dave Filoni loves to do that simply to mess with people, but also it means that he doesn't have an idea yet, or maybe he does and he's just saving it, but he doesn't want to put a pin on it if he doesn't have to at that moment in time. Because as time goes on, there's always room for a new story to come up in your brain. So, and also Thrawn just said it in the chat that it is confirmed that Thrawn and Ezra did survive that. They did survive being traveled through the galaxy, and that's why Ahsoka and Sabine are searching through the galaxy looking for him. It's just a matter of like, when do they find him? Where and how, and maybe Dave
how
doesn't
long
know
till Sabine and Ezra start getting it on like Donkey Kong, but
maybe Dave doesn't have the answer to his own question yet, or maybe he does, and again, he's just waiting for the right time to execute it, because we've seen Star Wars, sometimes you can have an idea and the execution just doesn't work out. So maybe there's a time and place for that to happen. But I'll bring up a wrestling point. We see a lot in American wrestling that certain storylines, you'll see the same matches repeated over and over and over again over a few short months because they don't want to put a bow on that storyline just yet. Whereas in Japan, sometimes they'll make a habit of keeping competitors away for a certain amount of time for like they'll have rivals have one big match for a year and they'll never lock up again for another 2 years, because the weight itself helps add to the storyline of like how much one of the wrestlers or both of them have improved since their last encounter, and how the last time they fought they were different people than they are now. So it makes the new battle that much more interesting. And the same could easily be said for when we next see Ezra, it's going to mean something because we've waited for such a long time. Just like now we know kind of what happened with Ahsoka. We didn't know what happened to her when Clone Wars came to an end. And then we find out, she's apparently had a big role in the start of the rebellion. And we thought she was done after season 2. And lo and behold, the World Between Worlds frees her up, and there's more story to tell.
Except, how does she have no interactions with Luke? And granted, the World Between Worlds is one of my favorite episodes of the entire show. But that's always left me asking.
And maybe that's part of the story itself. Like, she's a person out of time, and so therefore she has to be careful with her interactions with the galaxy around her because of the fact that she's been taken out of the timeline, and she has to be cautious of what she does for the sake of not screwing up the timeline by her being there. So her avoiding Luke could be part of her journey, and she's doing it intentionally because it might not be her destiny to have an interaction with her old master's son.
Are you telling me that we're going to have a Flashpoint paradox in Star Wars?
I know. I was like, is this guy talking about time travel in Star Wars? I was like, what?
Potentially. Maybe. I don't know. Listen, you're talking to a guy who once thought it would be a good comic book idea if Deadpool got the Infinity Gauntlet, went to the World Between Worlds, and just started fucking with the Star Wars galaxy left and right.
I just had a terrible idea for Rise of Skywalker.
I don't want to hear it. You're making an argument.
Yeah. Well, actually, to be fair, Ryan, if you honestly have something you also want to throw in, by all means.
All I'll say at this point is, like, neither of you have really, like, hit an actual arguing point, because all you're saying is one of you, I mean, I guess in this sense, this is the only arguing point, and I'd like to hear, like, in closing thoughts type of deal, Nico was saying he's okay with it because there was enough information given. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nico, but I get the impression you're saying there was enough information given for it to be a satisfying end. Chris essentially boiled down to saying there's not enough. You have too many questions left, such as Jason, such as the space whales dragging him off into somewhere and they don't know where, such as when is this going to all be resolved? And I'm almost surprised that, Nico has sort of defended the hokiness of it by saying, okay, they at least set up how goofy it is to have a space whale be your Deus ex machina. And Chris, you were like, okay, I can see that they set it up, but that's not even my problem. My problem is they didn't have enough information. So I'm curious, in sort of like closing it, how do you say that I like or dislike based off of what actually happens? Because it doesn't necessarily, like, if what happens is you don't get told enough, that's fine. But it's almost like an ambiguous ending is an ambiguous ending. But like, what actually happens to make you like or dislike it?
Well, you mentioned the hokiness of the whole thing. Might I remind you that in Star Wars, Anakin Skywalker is the Christ child. Like so it's already
he's a messianic figure, sure.
Like the saga is based around the most wonkiest birth in the galaxy. So that should be said right there. But in terms of like the lack of information versus having all the information I need, I acknowledge that there's some information that we don't have, and the reason why I'm okay with it is because I have a feeling that down the road we are going to get the information that we don't currently have now. And that's the thing is, I don't really separate Star Wars based on this TV show or that movie. I kind of see it as this
one
overall
picture.
Yes, I see it as this overall thing. And with the incorporation of video games and books as well, there are going to be some bad video games. There are going to be some bad books. But, if in terms of like the overall arcing story from as far back as the Darth Maul comic book, because that's the earliest canon we've gotten so far, to whatever we're going to get in The Rise of Skywalker, I like the story that we've been told from point A to point Z or point IX to be clever with the closing point. And that's basically why I'm okay with leaving certain things out. Because again, as I said before, we're going to get the answers at a later date, at a later time, in a different medium. If not Rebels, something else. And I will enjoy it when we get there because the wait will have helped build up the anticipation for that reveal. And it just means more Star Wars is coming, and we should be happy that more Star Wars is coming because, Star Wars is a big part of people's lives in multiple generations. The original trilogy was a big thing for our dads and grandparents. The prequels, some could say that was our time of Star Wars. And, it's becoming a much prouder thing to say as time goes on. And, there's a group of young children, especially little girls out there, who in 20 years, again, if a planet is still around for us to live on, they're going to say that the sequel trilogy was their start to Star Wars, and they're going to embrace it proudly.
And just sneak that in there, didn't you?
So, for me, Star Wars is an overall thing. I'm not just focusing on this one show.
No, and that's the thing. Like, Ryan, you actually hit the nail on the head of where this comes down to because, yes, it is all one giant picture. The problem is, at least for me, there wasn't enough color filled in to take the picture from being, wholly satisfying, albeit very blurry towards the bottom of it. And I wanted a little bit more color. I wanted a little bit more filled in. I wanted some more satisfaction. Like here, let me give you an example of what I consider to be a satisfactory end, but still giving you a couple questions to hold on to for future projects. Avatar. The good Avatar. My favorite show of all time. you have a satisfactory conclusion of every single character arc building up throughout the entire 3-season show. But there are just little things that they dangle in front of you, and it just leaves you wondering what's going to happen next. Like, for example, with Zuko, it ends with him asking his imprisoned father, "Where is my mother?" And we get that answer in a comic book that came out just a few years after the show was done. We see Aang and Katara. They have their kiss, and we know, okay, so they wind up together. Good. We see that Iroh gets his tea shot back. Good. And he finally is at peace, living in the place where his son got killed. How perfect. But there's the difference. It was in the execution. And I personally feel that Rebels didn't execute all of its final ideas it was trying to close out correctly, in my opinion. But then again...
You feel it didn't execute it in a way that works for your satisfactory needs. Whereas...
I'm not the only one, though.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of the videos on YouTube I've seen that have criticized Rebels give a lot of similar opinions. And granted, they're a lot more harsh about it, and some are just flat out dickish about it. So I'm being nice in comparison, because I still like it. I still like the ending. I just wanted more.
So, here's how I see it. So, it all comes down to how you perceive the show as a whole and your enjoyment of it as far as like what you get out of, like, because Nico's pointing out, right, that Star Wars to him is an all-encompassing thing, and this is a piece of the bigger puzzle. And so he's satisfied with getting this piece because he knows he's going to get more pieces in the future. The only negative I could say to that is you don't know you're going to get the pieces that you're looking for because you don't know that they're ever going to explain, let's just say, what happens to freaking Thrawn and Ezra. Like, you may get, yes, in passing, like in an interview, but you may not get it in like an actual whatever show or comic book or whatever. And the other thing
I will say, we never thought we'd get a visual interpretation of where did Ahsoka go after season 5,
right,
after Rebels, and now here we are, Clone Wars season 7, The Lost Arcs, coming to Disney Plus.
But people also never thought that Rebels would be a thing ever anyway. So there's also that. And then on Chris's side, he's saying, okay, he wants to know the major details to give him the bigger picture in the show that he's watching in the first place. And while I'm someone who loves ambiguous endings to some movies, Inception, that other people just don't understand because, I don't know, they're just not as cool as me or whatever. Yeah, I know, right? Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But because he loves Enemy, and that is, talk about an ambiguous ending. Goodness gracious. So, but all that to say, that is where I'll push back more on Nico's side and say, I love me a good ambiguous ending. But where unfortunately, sorry, Nico, I am going to give Chris the win for the sole fact that I think a show should set out to accomplish that story. And what swayed me was what he's talking about with Avatar, where you can have your little ambiguities here and there. And there's, plenty of shows that are like that where you never really know exactly what happens. And if you really want to, you can turn to the comic book and stuff like that to find out extra little thingies here and there. But, myself and a lot of other people, I feel like, Chris included, want our conclusion to the show we're watching in the show we're watching. Ambiguity can sometimes borderline on. Or a lot of other things besides, because I think that, again, the
MCU.
Comes down, right? Yeah, sure, maybe, yeah. I mean, that's still going strong.
But that's
though.
my
That's
understanding of all the conversations I've been hearing about it.
Right. So, in closing, for the moderation, I'm going to give this to Chris only because he slightly argued it better to say that you need to finish the show you're watching in the show you're watching. You can have your little ambiguities like if you're talking about some Flashpoint paradox, that would be something that you explore in another show or another comic or something like that. And you can leave that little ambiguity, or, where Thrawn ended up, but you don't know what happens to him or something along these lines. You can have your ambiguities here and there, but you should, to the utmost of your ability, finish the story that you're telling. Don't come out of nowhere, even if it's somewhat set up with space whales, and have them drag millions of light years away. And then it's like, oh, well, we're going to start a new adventure, go and finding them. It's like, all right, well, like, at least close out emotionally and close out emotionally these characters. That way we at least have an idea of like what the hell we just watched. So
I should have brought this up during the actual argument portion. Could the argument be made that it did finish, and then Dave Filoni threw that last little bit in to say, here's what's coming in the future, just be patient?
Yeah, but
it's possible,
still,
but
like, if you want to do like a post-credits,
like with the Loki series coming out, as a result of the events of Endgame, they gave little.
That's different. That's different.
Yeah.
That's a completely different timeline.
That's a whole nother timeline there, buddy.
Yeah.
So that's where I'll say, like, the story that you're telling isn't Loki in Avengers Endgame. You're telling the story of defeating Thanos. So with this, you're telling the story of Ezra. And if you don't even have your main character come, like with Lord of the Rings, right? Frodo goes on a boat and he goes somewhere to finish out his life. We know not where, but we know the end of Frodo's story in Middle Earth. We know how that ends, and then we
know that he takes the ring to Mount Doom, and he eventually gets it in the fire. That's right. The only if you don't have that happen and he just goes to the Grey Havens, you're like, well, what the fuck is this nonsense? But the Grey Havens ending, we already got his closure. This is just his reward.
So if you want to have Ezra, take a space whale ride out into the middle of space and nowhere, like, give us Infinity War-esque thing of him sitting on a front porch somewhere, and it's like, oh shit, where is he? And then you have your ambiguity, but like, you at least, like, you need a sort of like, here is the makes sense, and like, you need to. I don't like either, and this is maybe where my own personal. I'm not moderator anymore. I'm just like, in my opinion.
That's why I say just join the conversation already.
In my opinion, I hate having to do mental gymnastics to make a story make sense. Like. And sometimes knowing the answer sucks, too, because I'm going to probably piss 1,000,001 people off by saying I didn't need to know what happened to Leia and Han Solo, because in the end, it turns out that Han Solo was a deadbeat dad. So that pisses me off, which maybe is the point. Maybe that's what JJ wants. I don't know. Bloodline is an amazing book, and that explores a different part of their relationship that I love. And then it's like, by the time you get to Force Awakens, he sucks. In that sense.
Deadbeat dad, you're not wrong to say that, but why is he a deadbeat dad? It's because he was afraid of change. Like, so many things were changing in his life, and he was like, I'm scared. I don't know how to react to this, so I'm just going to go back to what I'm used to, because at least that's where I feel comfortable.
And that's where I'll be a total piece of shit Star Wars fan and be like, I'd rather just not know. Like, you don't want to find out that your dad isn't invincible and, can lift a 30-pound truck when you're a kid, and you're like, oh my gosh, he just did the coolest thing. He changed a tire. And it's like, how did he do that? You know what I'm saying? Like, I would rather keep the perfect image of Han Solo that I tend to get out of the original. But that's neither here nor there. My basic point was just that if you're going to tell a story,
how do you think Luke would feel? His father murdered a bunch of kids and then led.
We know how he feels, because he ugly cries in freaking Empire. We know how he feels. You know what I'm saying? Like, he gets PTSD from that shit. But I just think that if you're going to have 4 freaking seasons for a show, and as Case and I have opined in the past, waste some of those episodes on the shittiest storylines possible.
Job.
Yeah, what are you doing? Like, I get it. It's for kids, and I'm not a child. And, there's 1,000,001 ways that people on the internet could murder me. But I'm just saying, children deserve better. They deserve good storytelling.
Especially when you compare Rebels
This isn't fucking Caillou.
to fucking Resistance.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Sure.
as I said, by the way, Ryan, please watch Resistance. Kees has the whole thing downloaded. He'll send it to you, I'm sure.
Okay.
But
All right.
Resistance Season 1 literally only has one filler episode. Literally one. Every other episode in the show connects to each of the other episodes. Where the fuck was that in Rebels?
For real, yeah. Like, why are you wasting your budget and then not giving us the end to the story? Like, again, I get it. Like, ambiguity is so much fun in certain movies. Like, I literally in the past have Googled like movies with ambiguous endings because I want to watch them, and it's like, dude, this is freaking sick. Like, I just like that. Like, oh, like I can debate about this now, and you know, we can think about this, and this is so exciting. But you still need to have a form of resolution for the characters themselves and be like, oh, okay, now I have something to base my argument off of. There's really like, what is there to argue? Well, I think that Ezra went to this planet. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just really like, there's nothing to really get at. Whereas what if instead, like, to go off of the whole Flashpoint thing, fucking he's sitting there, he's got a gray beard, he's old already, and then young Sabine comes out of a portal in the middle of fucking air and it's just like, Ezra, finally we found you. And then, you know, like Marty's mom from Back to the Future is there too because it's time travel, why not? But I'm just saying, like, in all actuality, in all seriousness, like, what if there was just something that made you
really
made you be like, oh, okay, this is interesting, and this sets up the ambiguity of like, what? But we've gone over time.
We've gone over time, but well, to be fair, I don't mind when we go over time and we're actually having a good discussion about it. But I actually am. Nico, did you have a final thing you want to quick throw in?
I don't know if this really counts as a debating point, but again, I'd just like to bring up that the section of the World Between Worlds entrance, it has appeared on cover art for Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So maybe Ahsoka isn't the paradox, but who knows? The main character of that game could be.
Maybe Kel's the paradox.
That'd be interesting.
That'd be interesting. Although, if that's the case, then I'm scared. But we'll have to see. Thrawn, I am so sorry we totally neglected a lot of your points. Because you actually did bring up a fair point. That Rebels is, when you stop to think about it, it's more so about Lothal than really anything. Because Season 1 takes place there. Season 2 takes place there, for the most part. Season 4 takes place there. And you're right. But when that's the crux of your story, then you have kind of a shorter story, in my opinion. And the true story, in my opinion, of Rebels is obviously the formation of the Rebel Alliance and how all that came together. But there's also just a few details that were missing for my personal enjoyment. Now, that's not to say that the show was bad or anything. Like, I'm not going to be Cosmonaut Variety Hour, whatever the fuck that guy's name is. Because I love Rebels. I really do. I like the show. It just didn't end the way that I was left satisfied. As opposed to my favorite show of all time, Avatar: Last Airbender, which ended for me on the perfect fucking note.
You need to watch more TV then. I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong, but I just don't have time for it. But with that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in this week's episode of the Who Cares Anyway podcast. I had a lot of fun this episode, and it looks like you guys absolutely did as well. So, as my nose continues to drip, lovely, just fucking lovely. Sorry, but next week, I don't know what we're gonna do. We might do another one of these where we just hang out, shoot the shit for 2 hours, and have fun. But I can announce this, that in 2 weeks, on July 5th, we will be joined by star of the latest Disney Channel original series, Sydney to the Max. Also, Schmodown competitor, Winston Marshall. Very excited to have him on the show to talk about his new show and, you know, of course, talk about some Schmodown stuff because he's a cool guy. But until we get there, Ryan, where can the good folks find you online?
On Twitter at Clan McLellan, that's Clan McLellan, and on the Downtune Dissection podcast on this very channel and anywhere else that you can listen to podcasts. Basically,
And tell people who you got coming on.
We got some exciting stuff coming up for you guys. We have the guitarist and vocalist of the mathcore band Seder, Atlanta-based band. They're really, really good. Check them out and go ahead and give that episode a listen tomorrow at noon.
Woohoo! And Nico, where can the good folks find you online?
Facebook, Twitter, YouTube at Nico Suave Regoli, or just Nico Suave with 4 random meaningless numbers thrown at the end on Discord. Multiplex Entertainment, Zaddy Smith and I have a weekly discussion show called Crisis on Earthplex on Tuesdays. Currently 9-10 p.m. Eastern-ish. However, it is facing cancellation due to low views. So please watch it and save the show. So I'm not out of a job. Although I do enjoy working here, I also like having other things to do elsewhere because that's how you get around. But also on Multiplex, stay tuned because I think in the next 24 to 48 hours, Chris and my first round match in the Fandom Fight Summer Series Teams Tournament will be going up. We are facing Mischief Managed, the team of Caleb Boatman and Thomas Scully. So stay tuned for that whenever it drops on the Multiplex channel. But also Combat Wrestling Trivia on Facebook, Combat Wrestling Network on YouTube, at Combat Wrestling, the number 2 on Twitter. My match with Alex Warden finally dropped today, so go watch it on there as well. And Rolling Crits, or at Rolling Crits on social media. I think we're streaming Sunday afternoon or Sunday night. Not entirely sure yet, but we will be shooting something for it. So, and yeah, right here on Dedicated to Art or at D2A channel as well.
Yes, son.
Yeah, son. You guys can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Stardust, Letterboxd, and Discord at Skywalker Dohmen. You guys can follow this very channel on Twitter and Instagram at D2A channel. Please like our Facebook page. And like I said, stay tuned for go check out our Schmodown reaction we just had of the doubleheader today. And guys, you guys are the best. I always love how crazy the conversations can get in the chat, and it just puts a smile on my face because it just reminds me that people actually do pay attention. And for that, from the bottom of my heart and from the bottom of everyone's heart here, thank you so fucking much. And you all know what to do. Take care!
Yeah!